Hi folks, this is a Jupyter tips video to talk to you about linting and auto-formatting notebooks that contain Python code. And in particular, what we'd like to do is format these notebooks so that the code adheres to PEP 8 guidelines. So all of the notebooks and examples that I'm going to talk through are available in the Open Science Nerd GitHub online in the Jupyter tips repo. And the link to this repo and all of the installation instructions for the Conda virtual environment are available in the link below. So let's have a look at some messy code first and discuss why might we want to improve that code. So we've got an example here in notebook to format. It's a very simple notebook. It has some code in there to do some pre-processing and analysis of data. It has some imports, and then it has a function called messy data analysis. And we can see straight away when we look at this code, it's far from ideal. It's not formatted to PEP 8 standards. It looks like there's funny spaces in there, etc. So in fact, there are some very specific problems with it, some specific violations of PEP 8, including the line length. Many lines exceed 79 characters. In fact, some go over 100 characters in length. There's inconsistent indentation and white space. There's some issues with blank lines within the code, and some of the strings are improperly formatted. There's at least one other subtle issue with this notebook that we'll find when we lint it. So what is linting? Well, linting is basically a tool that you can use to list problems with the notebook relative to PEP 8. The one I've used for years is called Flake 8. So I typically use that with a Python module or with a Python package. However, if you combine that with a piece of software called MBQA, which is Quality Assurance for Jupyter Notebooks, there's a link here within the notebook to the documentation. You can basically use Flake 8 to lint notebooks as well, which is pretty cool. So let's have a go at doing that. So it's a command line tool. So here I am in a terminal in Jupyter Lab. Note that I'm in the Jupyter Tips Conda virtual environment, which has both NBQA and Flake 8 installed. And so in order to list the violations of PEP 8 in that notebook, I simply need to type NBQA and then Flake 8, whoops, and then the name of the notebook, O2 notebook to format. And if I run that, it gives me a list of all of the violations in there. And so we can see the first one in that list is something about NumPy being imported but not used. So we need to interpret what's going on there. So in the O1 linting notebook, we have the same output that I showed you there, along with an explanation of what's going on. So if we have a look again at that first failure, we can break that string down into different attributes. The first is pretty obviously the file name. Then we have the cell within the notebook so that we can see it was in the import cell, the line number within that cell, and the column number, which in this case is 1. Now, when I first saw the column number, that confused me many years ago, but what it effectively means is the character within the line, starting from character 1. Then we get the specific violation itself, the error code, and there's a whole list of those available online. There's a link here within the notebook to take you to that. And then a description of what the issue is. Well, we've imported NumPy, but we've not used it. So we shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't be importing packages that we're not going to use. So what might we do? That's certainly a long list of issues with that notebook. So what we could do is go through each of those manually and fix them, and then rerun our linter just to do a final check to see everything's okay. Now, of course, you don't really want to do that. When you've got a big notebook, you're going to have many violations. So the good news is we can use a tool called Black to auto-format that notebook. So if you're going to have a go at this yourself, what I recommend you do is keep a copy of this original notebook so that you can try Black with different settings. So what I'll do here is I'll just duplicate that notebook. Okay, and I'll rename that 03, nicely formatted. Okay, and then I'll head back over to my terminal. I'll just clear those results. So again, I'm going to combine the piece of software Black with NBQA. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run Black with its default settings to start off with. So 03, that runs really quickly. Okay, so it's formatted that. So let's have a look now at nicely formatted. Let's close and reopen. So you can see what it's done is it's wrapped the lines within that notebook. Now I think Black works to up to maybe 100 characters to start off with a line, so it's not adhering very strongly to PEP 8 guidelines, but it does produce quite elegant looking code compared to what we had before. Note also that it did not wrap the string. That's not something Black does. You'll need to use standard techniques to break that string yourself. What about if we wanted to be a bit more stringent and adhere to PEP 8 guidelines of line length 79? Well, we can run Black again, but this time it would include the line length option and stick that to 79. That's reformatted the notebook. Let's open and close it again. If we scroll down, we've now got slightly more strict wrapping of the lines, except of course for this string down at the bottom. So if we close that, a nice final check might be to run Flake 8 again. So let's change that to 3, nicely formatted, press enter. Now we can see there are a couple of issues left. The first is where it's still telling us we imported NumPy and we've not used it. So that's a manual fix you'd need to include. You need to go in there and delete that line and perhaps have a think about why did you import NumPy in the first place. And then secondly, we can see that in cell 2 on line 56, that line is still too long. It's 418 characters, is longer than 79, which is the recommended. So we need to go in and manually break that line using standard techniques. So that's it. Hope that was useful for you. What issues do you have with formatting your Jupyter Notebooks? Would you like me to cover anything else? Please feel free to leave a comment in the chat below and I'll make a video to help you out.